Eric Harris stood on the rooftop terrace of the glass-paneled building that bore his name, overlooking the city, glittering beneath a wash of icy air and streetlights. Below him, the skyline looked polished, curated, just like his life. Behind the closed glass doors, a corporate cocktail party buzzed with warmth and flattery. Investors, board members, hollow smiles, and safe wine. Eric had left his own celebration 2 floors down without explanation. No one followed. They rarely did. He tugged at his cuffs, adjusting the tailored sleeves of his wool overcoat, fingers stiff from the wind. Everything he wore tonight had a price tag most people wouldn't say out loud. His watch alone could pay off someone's mortgage. His shoes could fund a semester at a state college. And yet here he was, standing alone in the sharp wind, trying to remember what any of it meant. A voice echoed in his memory, one he hadn't heard aloud in years. The higher you climb, Eric, the colder it gets. Don't forget to bring a coat that fits your soul. His late wife used to say things like that, always with a crooked smile, like she knew he'd ignore the advice anyway. And he had. He climbed higher and higher until her absence felt like just another luxury loss. Eric blinked against the wind. He didn't want to go home. Instead, he walked down the elevator, past the valet, who gave him a puzzled glance, through the revolving doors, out into the downtown winter night. He ignored the black town car idling at the curb, driver waiting, heat on. Eric shoved his hands in his pockets and turned left, the wind punching against his collar. His breath trailed behind him in pale wisps. No direction, just the need to move. The city was quieter than usual. Cold tends to do that. Minneapolis could be brutal this time of year, and tonight it pulled no punches. He passed closed storefronts and flickering street lamps, the hum of traffic muffled by snow, already forming thin veils on the sidewalk. A faint trail of violin music filtered from a nearby cafe before being swallowed by the night. Then he saw her. It was a flicker at first, a shape beneath the yellowish light of a bus stop. Huddled and still, he would have walked past if not for a gust of wind that lifted the edge of a thin hospital scrub jacket. He stopped, looked again. A woman asleep. No, not quite. Curled tightly against one end of the bench, her arms wrapped around a small bundle. A child. They were layered in mismatched clothing, shrubs, a hoodie, a child's puffy coat that looked 2 sizes too small. The woman's head rested against the bench railing, her skin pale, lashes fluttering. The girl beside her stirred, pressing closer into the woman's side, tiny fingers peeking from frayed gloves. Something in Eric seized. It was like a thread in his chest pulled taut. He stepped forward slowly, quietly, unsure of what he was doing. Not out of fear, just the feeling that this moment wasn't meant to be interrupted. The woman's eyes opened barely, dull but aware. She looked at him with a flash of confusion, but said nothing. "I'm not here to bother you," Eric said, voice low. It's freezing out." She blinked once, twice. Her expression didn't change. "I have a coat," he added. "It's warm. Take it, please." He slid it from his shoulders and stepped forward, careful not to make sudden moves. She didn't speak, didn't protest, just watched him as he draped the heavy fabric over both her and the girl. The child sighed softly in her sleep, curling deeper into the warmth. Eric stepped back. A silence stretched between them. Snow drifted in slow spirals, catching the glow of the street lamp. "You a nurse?" he asked gently, nodding at her scrubs. She nodded once. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Used to be. That was all." He could have asked 100 things. "Where's your home? What happened? Why here? Why now?" But he didn't. He only said, "There's a diner down on 5th, open all night. They won't ask questions. Tell them Eric sent you. They'll give you something hot." She looked away toward the street. "I'm not here to fix anything," he added. "Just you shouldn't be out here tonight." The woman's gaze returned to him. Sharper now, not angry, just cautious, measured like she'd heard promises before, and found them all hollow. He nodded once and turned, walking away into the dark. No name, no contact, no card, just his coat and a weight in his chest he hadn't felt in years. He didn't look back. He didn't sleep that night either. His penthouse was warm, impeccable, and silent. He sat by the fireplace but didn't light it. Instead, he stared out the window, watching the snow thicken over the city. His phone buzzed twice with unread emails, a pitch deck, a partnership memo, a dinner invite. He didn't open any of them. Instead, he saw the bench, the frayed gloves, the girl's small hand curled into her mother's ribs. He told himself it was nothing, that he'd done a decent thing, and that was enough. But sometime before dawn, Eric pulled a legal pad from the drawer in his study and wrote down 5 words. Find the nurse from last night. He underlined it twice. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The cold always woke Naomi first. Even before her eyes opened, her body registered it. The ache in her fingers, the stiffness in her back, the sharp bite in her lungs. But this morning something was different. The cold was duller, muted. She slowly lifted her head from the back rest of the bus stop bench, disoriented. Then she saw it. A coat, thick, heavy wool, high-end, draped over her and Leia like a blanket. Not theirs, not from the donation bin. This was real. She blinked fast, her breath curling in front of her lips. Mom, Leia's voice, groggy and muffled. I'm here, baby, Naomi whispered, tucking the coat more tightly around her daughter's shoulders. You're okay. Leia shifted slightly in her sleep, cheeks flushed from the cold, but no longer shaking. Naomi watched her for a long moment, then looked around. No one, only snow falling soft against the pavement. No footprints nearby except her own from the night before. She sat there silently, tension rising in her chest. A coat like this wasn't left by chance. She remembered someone. Tall, dark coat, voice like calm thunder. A man, kind eyes. Maybe it was all fog now. She didn't remember what he said, just the tone, gentle, careful. A stranger who didn't ask questions. Naomi slowly stood and stretched, every joint protesting. Her back screamed from another night on a bench. She walked to the corner convenience store where the clerk sometimes let her use the bathroom. The same clerk watched her now through the glass, but said nothing as she passed. Inside the tiny restroom, Naomi locked the door behind her and stared into the mirror. Pale skin, chapped lips, sunken cheeks, hair twisted into a makeshift bun with a pen she found 2 days ago. She ran water over her hands, then cupped some to splash her face. The faucet groaned. The water was freezing. She dried off with her sleeves and whispered to her reflection, We're okay. We're okay today. Leia waited, curled up on the bench, nose buried into the lining of the stranger's coat. Naomi hesitated as she reached to lift it off the child's body. The tag was still inside. Barrow Reeves, London. It didn't belong here. Naomi folded it neatly and held it for a moment before laying it back over her daughter's lap. She couldn't keep it, but she couldn't give it back either. A diner up the block opened early for the morning crowd. Naomi hesitated outside the fogged-up glass window, glancing at the open sign, blinking red. She didn't plan to go in, just wanted the warmth for a second. Then a waitress opened the door. You Naomi? She asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Naomi froze. Yes, the woman smiled. Guy came in last night. Said if a woman named Naomi showed up with a kid, we should give her a hot breakfast. Paid in advance. What? Her voice cracked. Who? Didn't say, just left this. She handed over a small business card. No logo, just a name. Eric. Naomi stared at the card like it might catch fire. You want the booth by the heater? the waitress asked kindly. She nodded, still stunned. Yes, thank you. Inside, the warmth hit her like a blanket. She took off her hoodie, sat across from Leia, who now blinked sleepily at the smell of bacon. A plate arrived minutes later. Eggs, toast, hot chocolate. Leia smiled. Did someone make this for us? Yes, sweetheart, Naomi said softly. They did. She didn't eat right away. She watched her daughter devour her breakfast like it was Christmas morning, cheeks pink, eyes bright. Then she reached for a piece of toast with shaky hands. It had been days since they'd had something hot that wasn't from a soup line. But her mind wasn't on the food. It was on the man, Eric. He hadn't left a number, no message, no conditions, just warmth. And that haunted her more than if he'd asked for anything in return, because men always asked for something. She forced the thought away. After breakfast, Naomi returned the coat to the bottom of her rolling duffel and made her way to the community outreach center, where she sometimes helped sort medical supplies. It wasn't a job. But the nurse coordinator, Rosa, let her pitch in for a few hours and slip some gloves or hand warmers when supplies allowed. The center buzzed with quiet energy, clipboards, coffee, paperwork. She blended in quickly, grateful to feel useful again. Naomi, Rosa called gently. You got a minute? Naomi wiped her hands and stepped into Rosa's tiny office. Someone asked about you, Rosa said carefully. Naomi stiffened. Who? Tall guy. Looked like he stepped out of a GQ ad. Naomi's heart stumbled. He just asked if you were okay, didn't push, left right after. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Naomi didn't respond. Rosa leaned forward. You know him. I don't, Naomi said too quickly. Rosa raised an eyebrow. That's not a bad thing, just be careful, that's all. Naomi nodded, trying to smile, but her mind raced. He was looking for her. Whitefing. She walked home, if you could call it that, to the corner of 7th and Grant, where a narrow alley sheltered a few cardboard barriers from the wind. She'd memorized patrol schedules, made friends with a retired janitor who shared thermoses of tea. It wasn't safe, but it was the safest she could manage. Leia was asleep again, nestled into a sleeping bag a shelter had given them last month. Naomi leaned against the alley wall and closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the city. Eric, just a name, a stranger who had seen too much and said too little. She told herself it didn't matter, that his help had already passed, that they'd take the coat, the meal, and nothing else, but somewhere deep in her chest, something stirred. Not hope, not yet. Just the echo of warmth and the smallest flicker of curiosity she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Who leaves kindness like breadcrumbs and disappears? Eric stared out the floor to ceiling windows of his penthouse, coffee untouched on the counter behind him. The city below was waking up, its skyline brushed with morning light and last night's frost clinging to rooftops. Somewhere out there, she was waking too, if she'd slept at all. He hadn't planned to look for her again. He told himself that one kind gesture, walk away, feel like a human for 5 minutes, but the image kept looping in his mind. The nurse huddled on a bench in the bitter cold, her daughter clinging to her side like a second heartbeat. That moment had clawed under his skin. It wasn't pity, it wasn't guilt. It was something deeper, something unnameable. His phone buzzed on the counter. He ignored it. Across the room, a sleek folder sat open on the glass coffee table, the first page stamped with the logo of Harris Health Tech. It was a quarterly proposal, one he had authored 6 months ago, outlining new AI upgrades for a network of private hospitals across the Midwest. The section highlighted in yellow projected nursing staff reduction by 42%. He closed the folder without reading further. When the board had first approved the project, Eric told himself it was progress, efficiency, smart tech saving lives, but now he couldn't stop hearing Naomi's voice from the night before. The soft edge of her guarded thank you at the diner. She used to be a nurse. The phrase rang in his head like an accusation. Later that morning, Eric sat across from Julian Vance in the private conference room on the 39th floor. Glass walls, leather chairs, a view that made the city look like a snow globe. Julian flipped through the AI rollout packet with sharp eyes and sharper opinions. "This is clean," Julian said, tapping the folder. "Hosts will love it. Cuts costs, minimal friction, and we start pushing it at next month's expo." Eric leaned back, arms crossed. "There's something we need to rethink." Julian froze mid-page. "Rethink what?" "The projections are solid. We're ahead of schedule." Eric looked at him, then down at the city, the implementation phase, the staffing impact. Julian's brow furrowed. "You mean the nurses? They're not data points, Julian." Julian laughed, not unkindly. "Eric, you're not new to this. We're not firing anyone. We're offering buyouts, retraining, reallocating." "Into what? Into ghost roles? Into temp agencies with no benefits?" Eric's voice was quiet but firm. Julian's smile faded. "Where is this coming from?" Eric didn't answer right away. He stood and walked to the window, one hand braced against the frame. "Last night I met someone," he said finally. Julian raised a brow. "This about a woman?" Eric turned slowly, jaw tight. "She's a nurse. Lost her job after a hospital shutdown. Lives on the street with her daughter." Julian sighed. "Eric, you can't build a business model around personal guilt." "It's not guilt," Eric said. "It's reality." Julian tossed the folder onto the table. "You want to redesign the rollout because of one woman?" "No," Eric said. "I want to know how many more there are." The silence between them stretched taut as piano wire. Finally, Julian spoke. "You're chasing something that doesn't scale." Eric nodded once. "Maybe, but I can't ignore it." Julian didn't argue. He just stood gathering his things. "When you're ready to talk numbers again, call me." After Julian left, Eric stood at the window a long time, the city breathing beneath him like a patient he couldn't diagnose. That afternoon, he returned to the community health center, the one near the church kitchen. He didn't ask for Naomi by name, just sat in the waiting area, pretending to review donor paperwork until a familiar voice reached his ears from the back hallway. "Double glove the box on the left. That batch leaks. Her Naomi." He turned slightly, careful not to seem obvious. She moved with precision, sorting donated medical supplies with another volunteer. Her posture was straight, her hands quick, her expression focused. She wasn't performing. She didn't even know he was there. That struck him harder than it should have. He waited until her shift ended. Outside, the sky was already dimming, twilight draping the buildings in soft gray. Naomi exited through the side door, a rolled-up hoodie under one arm and her daughter's sleeping bag tucked in the other. She nearly walked past him. "I didn't mean to surprise you," he said quietly. She froze mid-step, her eyes locked with his, calm, unreadable. "You found me," she said. "You weren't hiding." Naomi tilted her head. "People like you usually don't follow up. I've never met anyone like you before." She said nothing, just watched him, one brow slightly raised. Eric took a slow breath. "I am not here with an agenda, no business pitch, no savior complex, just I've been thinking about you, about your daughter, about what I saw." Naomi's voice was steady. "What you saw was one night. That's not my story." "Then tell me your story." She blinked, surprise. Then her lips pressed into a thin, tired line. "Stories don't matter much when you're just trying to find a warm place to sleep." He stepped forward slightly. "Then let me help change that." Her jaw tightened. "I don't need rescuing." "I didn't say you did." They stood like that for a moment, the air between them charged with everything unspoken. The wind picked up, tugging at her sleeves. Finally, Naomi shifted her stance. "I appreciate what you did," she said. "The coat, the meal, but I've got a rhythm now. Disrupting it, good intentions or not, can be dangerous." Eric nodded slowly. "I get that. I don't think you do," she replied. But you're trying, and that's something. She turned to leave. Naomi, he said, stopping her. She paused but didn't turn around. There's a motel a few blocks from here, he said. Nothing fancy. I've already covered the week. No names, no strings, just a place where the heater works. A long silence. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Why? Because it's 19 degrees tonight, he said. And your daughter deserves better than frostbite. Naomi closed her eyes for a second. Then she nodded once, barely. I'll think about it. She walked away into the dusk, coatless, back straight, steps slow but steady. Eric watched until she disappeared around the corner. He didn't follow. He just stood there and whispered to no one, I'll be here tomorrow too. And he meant it. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The motel sign buzzed faintly in the darkness. One of the neon letters flickering like it couldn't decide whether to give up or keep glowing. Snow fell in slow spirals, dusting the curb, softening the edges of everything. Eric leaned against the post near the front office, collar up, gloved hands buried deep in his coat pockets. He had no idea if she'd come. The desk clerk inside had taken the room key without question, slid it into a plain envelope, and promised not to mention his name. No receipts, no follow-ups, just a warm, clean room, paid in advance for 7 nights. He didn't know why he needed to see her walk through that door. Maybe he just needed proof that a small act of humanity could still ripple out. Or maybe it was because the image of Naomi holding her daughter like a shield had carved something permanent into him, something that wouldn't leave. The street was quiet, only the occasional hum of a passing car or the crunch of tires in snow. He glanced at his watch, 9:03 p.m., and then movement at the end of the block. Naomi. She walked slowly, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, her coat buttoned tight. Leah held her hand bundled in layers, her small face peeking out beneath a wool hat. The girl looked up at her mother as they neared, asking something Eric couldn't hear. Naomi didn't speak until they reached the sidewalk in front of the motel. You said the heat works? She asked, voice flat, but not cold. It's not luxury, Eric said, standing straighter, but it's clean, quiet. Naomi glanced toward the office, then at the building itself, a long row of identical doors, each one hiding its own story. Leah let go of her mother's hand and stepped closer to Eric, curiosity lighting her face. You came back, the little girl said, smiling. I said I would, he answered gently. Leah nodded as if that settled something unspoken. She looked up at the snow, catching a flake on her mitten, then turned back to her mom. Can we go inside now? My toes feel like ice cubes. Naomi nodded, then looked at Eric, her eyes sharp. I don't want to owe you. You don't, he said quietly. You're not a debt. Her shoulders tightened for a second, then dropped. He handed her the envelope. Room 7, no check-in needed. There's extra blankets in the bathroom stocked. Naomi took the envelope slowly. You really planned this out? I didn't plan for anything, he said. I just wanted you both to be warm tonight. She looked at him for a long moment, not grateful, not soft, just searching, as if waiting for the part where the story turned and he asked for something in return. He didn't. I'll check out in the morning, she said. No rush, Eric replied. The room's yours for the week. Naomi hesitated, then turned, guiding Yayla toward the door marked 7. She slid the key in, pushed it open, and disappeared inside without another word. The door closed with a soft thud. Eric exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. The next morning, Naomi woke to silence. No car horns, no shivering, just the hum of the heater and the faint rhythm of Leah's breathing beside her. The girl was curled like a cat under 3 layers of blankets, one foot sticking out. Naomi sat up slowly, unsure what day it even was. She blinked at the plain white walls, the beige curtains. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't rushing through mental checklists, no patrol schedules to avoid, no soup kitchen cues, no bench to guard from strangers. Her body didn't ache. That alone felt like a betrayal. Leah stirred. Mommy, Can we stay here forever? Naomi smiled sadly. Just a few nights, baby. Just enough to rest. Leah yawned, her voice still thick with sleep. Did the nice man leave? Naomi paused. He might have. But he gave us a room. That means he likes us, right? It means he didn't walk by, Naomi said. And that matters. But her voice faltered because she didn't understand him either. That afternoon, Naomi stepped outside, coat zipped to her chin, the motel key in her pocket. She told Leah to nap, then walked down the street to the small strip mall nearby. There was a corner bakery she remembered from her nursing shifts, cheap coffee, warm bread, and no questions. As she sipped from a paper cup, she caught sight of a familiar figure through the glass window. Eric, seated at a booth, laptop open, coat draped over the back of the chair. He didn't see her at first. He was staring at the screen, a crease between his brows. She debated walking away, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the heat from the coffee in her hands, or the way the morning had felt so strangely quiet. Maybe it was Leah's voice from earlier. She stepped inside. He looked up the moment the bell above the door chimed. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. Did you come to check if I use the room? No, he replied. I come here when I need quiet. She raised an eyebrow. A tech CEO needs quiet. More than you think. She slid into the booth across from him, setting her cup down. Why are you doing this? She asked directly. And don't say because it's cold. He met her eyes, didn't flinch. I don't know, he said honestly, but you matter. And not just because of what I saw at the bus stop. Naomi folded her arms. You don't even know me. I'd like to, Eric said. Silence fell between them. She studied him carefully, too carefully. What's your story? She asked. He looked out the window. I used to be a surgeon, he said. My wife got sick, cancer. I left medicine, built something that would have saved her faster than I ever could. Naomi didn't speak. I buried myself in code and numbers, he continued. It was easier than remembering what helplessness felt like. Her voice was quiet. You think helping me undo that? No, he said, but it's the first time in a long time I felt something real. She looked away, the snow outside catching in gentle sheets on the sidewalk. People always come in with good intentions, she said. They give coats, food, a night indoors, then they vanish. I'm not trying to be a savior, Naomi. Then what are you trying to be? He didn't answer right away. Maybe someone who doesn't vanish. Her eyes softened barely, but then she stood. I have to get back. He nodded, not pushing. Same time tomorrow. We'll see. She walked to the door, paused, and without turning said, Thank you, but don't make promises you won't keep. Then she stepped out into the snow. Leaving behind the scent of coffee and something unspoken, Eric watched her go, a strange ache rising in his chest. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But she hadn't walked past him either. And that was a beginning. The motel heater hissed softly, a steady hum that filled the silence between them. Naomi sat at the small table by the window, legs tucked underneath her, flipping through a local job bulletin she'd picked up from the community center. The pages were thin, smudged with ink. Line cook, part-time custodian, overnight front desk, no health insurance. Each listing felt like a reminder of how far she'd fallen and how steep the climb back would be. Leah was sprawled across the bed behind her, humming while she traced shapes on the fogged-up window with her fingertip. Her voice rose and fell like a lullaby only she knew. You used to work at a hospital? Leah asked, not turning around. I did, Naomi replied softly. Did they have snacks? Naomi smiled despite herself. Sometimes, but only on birthdays. Do you think you'll go back there? Her smile faded. I don't think they'd remember me. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She froze. No one knew they were here. She hadn't told anyone, hadn't left a name. She stood slowly, heart inching toward her throat. "Who is it?" she called out. "It's Eric." Her shoulders dropped, but not in relief. She glanced back at Laya. The girl was already climbing off the bed. Naomi cracked the door open, keeping the latch in place. Eric stood there holding a paper bag and two to-go coffee cups, cheeks slightly red from the cold, his breath visible. "I come bearing offerings," he said with a tentative smile. Naomi hesitated. Leia peeked from behind her. "Is that hot chocolate?" Eric nodded with whipped cream. The door clicked shut for a second. Naomi unlatched the chain and opened it fully. "You didn't need to come here," she said. "I know," he said, "but I thought maybe we could talk." She stepped aside reluctantly, and he entered with quiet caution, as though the room were sacred and fragile all at once. Naomi gestured to the small table. "Sit before Isla tackles you." Eric set the drinks down and pulled out muffins, napkins, a few clementines. "It's not gourmet, but it's warm." Leia grabbed her cup and climbed back onto the bed, sipping carefully. Naomi took the seat across from him, folding her arms. "You've already done more than most people in this city. Why are you still here?" Eric looked down, ran a hand over the back of his neck. "I guess I don't have a good answer for that." "Try," she said not unkindly. He met her eyes. "Because you didn't ask me for anything. Because you didn't smile to make me feel better. Because for once I saw someone who didn't need saving. They just needed someone not to walk past." Naomi inhaled sharply, blinking once as if the weight of that answer landed somewhere she hadn't been ready for. "I don't trust easily," she said. "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" Eric hesitated. Time, a little space, conversation. She looked at him carefully, watching the way his jaw tensed slightly when she didn't speak, how he avoided eye contact but kept his voice steady. "What do you want from me, Eric?" "Nothing," he said. I just, I don't want to walk away." A quiet beat passed. "I have been let down more times than I can count," Naomi said, voice barely above a whisper. "By the system, by coworkers, by people who promised they'd help and disappeared the second it got inconvenient. I'm not them. I don't know that." "I know," he said gently, "but maybe over time I can show you." She turned away, blinking at the window. "I was a good nurse," she said. "I knew every protocol, every patient name. I stayed late, ran back when short-staffed, covered extra shifts. I don't doubt that. And then they closed my unit without warning. Just gone. Budget cuts." Her voice cracked. "I got a severance check and a thank you email. And when I couldn't pay rent because I'd been taking care of my mom full-time during her hospice, they told me they wished me the best." Eric swallowed. "I'm sorry," she shrugged, but the motion was brittle. "She died a week later. We didn't even have a funeral. I used the last of my savings for a cremation. Leia doesn't remember her, but she used to sing her lullabies." Yayla's soft humming in the background suddenly felt like an echo. "I didn't mean to fall this far," Naomi said. "I just stopped being able to get back up." Eric reached across the table slowly. His hand rested near hers, not touching, just there. "You haven't failed," he said. "You're surviving. That's not weakness. That's endurance." Naomi looked down at his hand. Her fingers twitched slightly, but she didn't take it. "I don't know how to accept kindness anymore," she said quietly. "That's okay," he replied. "I'm still going to give it." A long pause. Then Leia asked, "Mr. Eric, do you have a home?" He turned to her, surprised. "I do. Do you live alone?" He nodded. "Why?" Eric's throat tightened. "Because I haven't figured out how not to." Leia tilted her head, thoughtful. "You can come visit us again." Naomi exhaled a laugh, small but real. "Careful," she said. "She doesn't forget promises." "Neither do I," Eric replied. He stood slowly. "I'll let you both rest." Naomi walked him to the door. Before he left, he turned back. "I meant what I said yesterday. I'm not here to fix your life, but I'd like to be in it, if you'll let me." She nodded, not quite smiling. We'll see. The door closed softly, and for the first time in a very long time, Naomi stood in the quiet and didn't feel entirely alone. The church basement smelled like baked bread and old radiator heat. Naomi pulled on a borrowed apron and stood behind the serving line, ladling hot vegetable stew into chipped bowls. The kitchen was already buzzing, volunteers chatting softly, the clatter of trays and silverware, the shuffle of boots on tile. It was her second day back in this space, but it felt like years. She worked fast mechanically. The rhythm of it grounded her. Chop, stir, serve. She didn't look up much, didn't want to. The soup kitchen wasn't a place for eye contact, not when everyone there was trying not to be seen, or worse, remembered. Hey, Naomi, a warm voice called out. She glanced up to see Maggie, short, sharp-eyed, gray curls tucked under a knit cap, walking in with two canvas bags full of donated bread. Maggie had been here for over a decade, long enough to know every regular by name and every story by heart. You're early, Naomi said, grateful for the distraction. Maggie set the bags down and shrugged off her coat. Well, I figured you'd need help this morning. Naomi offered a faint smile. Always. As they worked side by side, Maggie gave her a look. You're quieter than usual. Naomi stirred the pot in front of her, watching steam curl toward the ceiling. Just tired, she said, but her voice lacked weight like it didn't even believe itself. Maggie didn't press. Not yet. She never did. But Naomi could feel the question hanging there waiting. She knew what Maggie wanted to ask. It had been 3 days since Eric had dropped off breakfast at the motel. Since he had sat across from her, with his quiet steadiness and kind eyes offering no agenda, just presence. And Naomi hadn't seen him since. Not that she expected him to come back. She'd told herself over and over it didn't matter if he did. That kindness wasn't a contract, but the space he left behind was louder than she anticipated. She was rinsing a ladle at the sink when the door creaked open behind her. She turned instinctively. There he was. Eric stepped into the basement slowly, his eyes adjusting to the dim light, hands stuffed awkwardly in his coat pockets. His hair was tousled, like he'd run a hand through it a dozen times before walking in. Maggie looked up, curious. Naomi froze. Hi, Eric said, a little breathless. I wasn't sure you'd be here. I wasn't sure you'd look, she replied too quickly. He offered a half smile. I've been trying to find the right moment. There is no right moment here, she said. Just keep moving or get run over by the lunch line. Eric's gaze softened. Then I'll move. She went back to drying utensils, heart pounding louder than the industrial fan humming above them. Maggie arched a brow at Naomi, then leaned toward Eric with a conspiratorial grin. You wash dishes? I do now, he replied, stepping toward the sink. Maggie laughed. Well then, welcome to the hardest working corner in Minneapolis. Naomi passed him a stack of trays without looking up. He rolled up his sleeves without a word and started rinsing. Quiet, careful, like she might vanish if he moved too fast. For a few minutes, the three of them worked in silence, just the swish of water, the clatter of cutlery, the distant chatter of diners in the next room. Eventually, Maggie ducked out to check supplies, leaving them alone. You didn't have to come, Naomi said softly, still facing the sink. I know, he said, but I wanted to. She dried her hands slowly, turned to face him. Why? He hesitated, then set the tray down and looked at her directly. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you, he said, and not because I pity you or because I want to swoop in and solve everything. That's not what this is. Naomi's arms folded across her chest, her voice steady. Then what is it? Eric's eyes didn't waver. It's me seeing someone who still shows up to serve others, even when she barely has anything herself. It's me realizing I feel more honest around you than I do in boardrooms with people I've known for years. She held his gaze, but something in her expression shifted. A softness, a question. Do you always talk like that? She asked. He smiled. Only when I mean it. Naomi exhaled, a small laugh escaping her. You really don't know how to be casual, do you? Not when it comes to people who matter. Her face went still again. Serious. You don't know me, Eric. I'd like to, he said, if you'll let me. A pause, then Naomi took a small step back. There's a kid in the line who shows up every Wednesday, doesn't talk much, but he always asks for two roles, one for him, one for someone who never comes. Eric frowned. Why? Because it makes him feel less alone, she said. Sometimes people pretend company to survive. He looked down. Are you pretending with me? Naomi's voice was quieter now. I haven't decided yet. And they stood like that, just two people on opposite sides of a beat-up sink, the smell of soup thick in the air, a whole world of unsaid things sitting between them. Then Maggie returned with a bag of onions and a knowing glance. Naomi stepped aside to help, and Eric took the hint. I'll be here again tomorrow, he said softly. Naomi didn't turn around, but her voice followed him as he walked away. We'll see. He smiled to himself as he pushed the door open, snowflakes brushing his face like tiny reminders that some things were still unfolding. And inside, Naomi wiped her hands on her apron and whispered under her breath, we always do. The sky had turned that grayish blue that meant snow was coming again, the kind of soft light that made everything feel a little quieter, a little heavier. Naomi stood behind the counter at the church kitchen, her sleeves rolled up and her hair tied in a messy knot. She had been slicing carrots for the last half hour, more for the rhythm than necessity. Her hands moved on autopilot, but her mind was restless. Eric hadn't come yesterday. It shouldn't have mattered. She told herself it didn't. But it did. Leia had even asked that morning casually while brushing her teeth with a travel-sized tube. Is Mr. Eric still busy? Naomi had answered with a vague, probably. Now she stared down at the cutting board, suddenly unsure how many carrots she'd already gone through. Too many. Not enough. She stopped and closed her eyes for a breath. Maggie appeared behind her, setting down a tray of biscuits. You're slicing those like they offended you. Naomi gave a tired laugh. Just thinking. Maggie gave her a look, the kind that came from years of seeing too much and saying just enough. Let me guess. Tall, thoughtful, wears guilt like an accessory. Naomi shot her a sharp glance, but it softened almost immediately. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Naomi didn't answer right away. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, set the knife down, and leaned against the counter. He's different, she said finally. He listens. He doesn't look at me like I'm a project, and he talks to Leia like she's a person, not a cause. Maggie crossed her arms. And you're waiting for the catch, aren't you? Always, Maggie said. But sometimes, honey, there isn't a catch. Sometimes it's just timing. Terrible, beautiful timing. Naomi exhaled slowly. The kitchen door creaked open behind them, followed by a soft voice. Hi. Both women turned. Eric stood in the doorway, hair damp from snow, coat dusted with flakes. He looked apologetic, a little breathless, a little unsure. I'm sorry I missed yesterday, he said. I got pulled into a board meeting that went sideways. Naomi's stomach twisted at how relieved she felt just seeing him. You don't owe me an explanation, she said more sharply than she intended. He nodded. I know, but I wanted to give you one anyway. Maggie excused herself, not subtly. Eric stepped forward, pulling off his gloves. You okay? Naomi busied her hands with the carrots again. I'm fine. You sure? She looked up at him. Why are you here, Eric? Really? He paused. Because every time I'm not, it feels like I'm somewhere I don't belong. Naomi blinked. I spent years building something I thought would matter, he continued. And it does in some ways, but when I walk into a room full of suits and numbers, I don't feel seen. I feel sold. But when I'm here watching you work, watching Leia smile, I feel like I exist, Naomi swallowed. You don't even know us. I'm trying to, he said. She put the knife down again. This isn't easy for me. I'm not asking for easy, he said gently. I'm asking for real. She looked at him for a long time, then quietly, you ever lost something you couldn't fix? Eric's jaw tightened. Yes, my mother was the strongest person I ever knew, Naomi said, her voice low. She raised me on a waitress's salary and bedtime stories, taught me to sew my own scrubs when I couldn't afford new ones. She died in a hospice bed with no one but me and Laya holding her hand. Eric's voice cracked. I'm sorry. She used to say, people don't need you to be perfect, just present. He nodded. She sounds like someone I wish I'd known. Naomi blinked back sudden wetness. She would have liked you. Or maybe warned me about you. Hard to tell. He smiled softly. Smart woman. Naomi reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small photo, faded, worn at the corners. A woman with tired eyes and a radiant smile holding baby Leia. Eric took it carefully, studied it. She looks like you. She was louder, Naomi said with a smile. And stubborn. I've noticed the stubborn part. She laughed and the sound broke the tension like sunlight breaking through clouds. A silence followed, not heavy but full. Then she said, if you really want to help, the shelter needs hygiene kits, toothbrushes, soap, simple stuff. Done, he said immediately. Tell me what you need and I'll bring it. Naomi arched an eyebrow. Just like that, he looked at her. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here because I want to stay close. She didn't answer that, but she didn't walk away either. Later that evening, after the kitchen closed and the last trays were stacked, Naomi and Eric stood outside under the awning while the snow fell harder. She looked up at him, breath visible between them. Tomorrow, he nodded, tomorrow. She stepped back, brushing snow off her sleeves. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone temporary. Eric's voice was quiet. Maybe I used to be, but not anymore. She didn't speak, just nodded once and turned to go. And as she walked away, Eric whispered to himself, real, I meant it. The library on Hennepin Avenue always smelled like paper and dusted cinnamon, as if memories lingered in the bindings. Naomi hadn't been there in months, not since before her mother's final weeks. But Laya had begged. Just 1 hour, her daughter had said that morning, eyes wide. They have the big pillows in the puppet corner. And now here they were. Naomi seated at a wooden table near the children's section, watching Laya settle into a beanbag with a picture book twice the size of her lap. It was a strange kind of peace, one she didn't trust yet. It felt borrowed. Naomi rested her arms on the table, letting herself breathe. The motel room was still theirs for another night. She had cleaned Laya's coat this morning in the bathroom sink, hung it near the heater to dry. For once, they didn't wake up to frost on their eyelashes. Across the room, a group of children gathered near the rug for story time. Naomi smiled faintly at the sight. Caregivers coaxing kids into quiet circles. Some toddlers crawling, others bouncing with excitement. A librarian went forward. A woman with silver glasses and a warm cardigan, holding a book high. And then the door opened. She saw him before he saw her. Eric, hair slightly windblown, a folder tucked under one arm. He moved with that unintentional grace she'd come to recognize. Never rushed, never loud, but always like he was carrying something invisible and heavy. Naomi blinked, unsure what to feel. He spotted her a moment later. Their eyes met. He smiled soft and surprised. I didn't expect to see you here, she said as he approached. I could say the same. She nodded toward the story corner. Laya begged me for library time. Eric followed her gaze. She's good at convincing. Naomi tilted her head. And what brings you here? Looking for self-help books? Eric chuckled. Actually, tax documents. Riveting stuff. A silence passed, easy and warm. Then from across the room, Leia's voice rang out. "Mr. Eric!" Naomi froze. Leia was already bounding across the carpet, arms flung wide. Eric caught her in a careful crouch, laughing as she hugged him tight. "You found us," she beamed. "I must have excellent timing," he replied. Naomi rose slowly, unsure whether to be touched or tense. She walked over as Eric gently released Leia. "We were just starting story time." Naomi said, "I wouldn't dream of interrupting," Eric replied, standing. But Leia tugged his hand. "You can sit with us, please." Naomi opened her mouth to decline, to redirect. She wasn't sure, but Leia was already pulling him toward the beanbags. Naomi followed, cheeks warming. They settled in, the three of them forming a small crescent on the rug. The librarian opened the first book, her voice calm and musical, the kind that made the whole room lean forward. It should have been a simple moment, but Naomi couldn't ignore how close Eric sat, how gently his arm rested behind Leia. Not touching her, just nearby. She couldn't ignore how natural it felt and how terrifying that was. After the second story, Leia leaned against Eric's side, eyes wide with wonder. He whispered something to her. Naomi couldn't hear what, but Leia giggled, and it wrapped around Naomi's chest like thread pulling too tight. When the final page turned, applause rippled through the room. Leia clapped enthusiastically, then looked up at Eric. "Do you like stories?" "I love them," he said. "Mommy used to read to me every night before we had to move." Naomi stiffened. Eric looked at her, understanding passing between them. "I bet she told the best ones," he said. Leia nodded. "She makes up voices." Naomi chuckled. "Now you're giving away my secrets." Leia stretched, yawned dramatically, then climbed back into her mother's lap. "I like when we're like this," she mumbled. "Like normal." Naomi's breath caught. Eric didn't speak. They left together when the sky had begun to dim, snow lightly falling in elegant flakes. Leia walked ahead, hopping into every patch of untouched white she could find. Eric and Naomi trailed behind her on the sidewalk. "She misses stability," Naomi said finally, "even if she doesn't have the words for it." "She's strong," Eric said. "She shouldn't have to be," Naomi replied, voice lower. They paused at the corner. The traffic light flicked red to green. Leia waited, turning back, snow in her lashes. "Do you ever think," Naomi asked, "that maybe you were never meant to be the person you became?" Eric looked at her, startled. She didn't wait for his answer. "I trained for a medicine," she said. "I was supposed to help people heal, and now I hand out soup with borrowed gloves and sleep on a mattress older than my kid." He didn't speak. Naomi turned to him. "And you? You left something behind too, didn't you?" He met her eyes. "Yes." "What was it?" "Myself," he said softly. They stood there, wind whispering between buildings. Leia tugged Naomi's hand. "Can we go to the diner? They have the peppermint pancakes." Naomi looked down at her, then at Eric. He smiled faintly. "My treat." Naomi hesitated, but then she nodded. Inside the diner, it was warm and golden and smelled like syrup. They took a corner booth and Leia colored on the placemat with borrowed crayons. Eric stirred his coffee. Naomi sipped hers in silence, and then softly he said, "I want to do more than show up. I want to stay." Naomi looked at him, truly looked. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he admitted. She nodded slowly. "Then we start small." And in that small booth, under flickering lights and over plates of peppermint pancakes, something fragile and brave began to take root. Not a promise, but a choice. The Harris Health Tech offices rose like a monument of glass and ambition over downtown Minneapolis. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, polished steel, backlit digital displays, looping success stories and investor headlines. Eric walked through it all with his hands in his coat pockets, eyes forward, but his mind elsewhere. His meeting with Julian was in less than 5 minutes. He hadn't told Naomi about it. Not yet. The elevator opened with a chime and deposited him onto the executive floor. The contrast was immediate. Sleek furniture, silence punctuated only by keystrokes and perfectly modulated phone voices. Julian's office door stood slightly ajar. Eric stepped inside. Julian looked up from a spreadsheet, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. "You're late," he said without looking at the clock. "I'm here," Eric replied evenly, taking the chair across from him. Julian closed the laptop with a soft snap. That proposal from Metasphere came through. Eric waited. Julian leaned back, tapping the folder. "They're ready to buy in. Full implementation of our diagnostic AI across 6 major hospital systems. It's everything we've been building toward." And the staff displacement. Julian shrugged. "Minimal compared to what we saved them. Nurses are overhead. Eric, the tech doesn't call in sick." Eric's jaw clenched. Julian studied him. "What's going on?" "I met someone," Eric said. That got Julian's full attention. "Is that why you've been slipping off to community centers and church kitchens?" Eric didn't respond. Julian leaned forward. "You know what we do here. You help build the systems that streamline care, save lives. Are you going to throw that away over a personal side project?" "She's not a project." Eric said she's a nurse who lost everything when a hospital we used to partner with shut down their pediatric wing. Her daughter sleeps in a motel room we paid for. Julian blinked. Eric continued. "And our tech, the one you're about to pitch to 6 new hospitals, would eliminate thousands more like her. You're being emotional. I'm being human." Julian sat back, exhaling hard. "You can't fix every broken part of the system by dragging one woman out of it." "I'm not dragging her anywhere," Eric said, standing. "She's the one reminding me what this was supposed to be about." Julian folded his arms. "If you derail this deal, Eric, the board will ask questions. Let them." When Eric left the office, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt heavy, but underneath the weight was something else. Conviction. Later that evening, the sky was thick with snow again. Naomi sat at the diner table with Laya, who was doodling cats on a napkin while humming softly. Naomi watched her with a quiet ache in her chest. There was something about watching your child pretend to be carefree when you knew they were listening to every silence between your words. Eric entered, brushing snow off his coat, his hair damp from the wind. He looked tired but lit from within. Naomi smiled faintly. "Rough day." He sat down across from her. "Julian's not thrilled with me." "Julian, my business partner, co-founder, visionary capitalist." Naomi's eyes sharpened. "You told him about me." "I told him about what we're doing," Eric said, "and what we're not doing anymore." Naomi leaned in slightly, which is, Eric took a slow breath. "We're pulling out of the Metasphere deal." Her eyes widened. "Eric, I can't push a platform that cuts care just to raise stock value. But that's massive. That's a 7-figure deal, isn't it?" "8, Naomi stared at him. "You gave it up for me." "No," he said gently, "for every nurse like you. For every patient who won't be a line item in an algorithm." She didn't know what to say. Her voice had evaporated somewhere between her heart and her throat. "I'm not a hero," Eric said. "Quiet her now. I just stopped wanting to be a ghost in my own company." Naomi reached for her coffee, hands trembling slightly. "That kind of decision has fallout." "I know. Will the board come after you?" "Probably. And you're okay with that?" Eric looked at her. "I'm not sure, but I am sure of you." That made her look away. "Eric," she said after a long pause, whatever this is between us, it's moving fast, I know. And I'm not someone you date for image or nostalgia. I come with brass, a whole card of them. I see them." She met his eyes again. "And you're not scared off?" "I'm terrified," he said, "but not of you, of doing nothing." A silence stretched between them, full of meaning. Then Laya looked up, holding her drawing high. I made us a family picture. Naomi blinked fast. The paper showed three stick figures, one tall with a T, one in scrubs with a bun, and a little girl holding both their hands. Eric reached for it, voice soft. Can I keep this? Leia grinned. Only if you promise to come back. Naomi felt something crack open in her chest. Eric looked at both of them. I promise. And he meant it. Every word, every choice, even the ones that would cost him. The invitation came in a plain white envelope slipped under the door of Naomi's motel room just before noon. No note, no handwriting, just a folded piece of thick paper inside with the name of a restaurant printed in elegant gold script and a time 7 o'clock p.m. She knew immediately who it was from. Eric hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't stopped by the church kitchen that morning. And yet, here he was again, showing up in ways that were both gentle and bold. She stood in the middle of the room, holding the invite like it might disappear if she blinked. Leia peeked up from the motel bed where she was practicing letters on a napkin. Did Mr. Eric leave us a treasure map? Naomi gave a small laugh hollow in her chest. Something like that. Part of her wanted to go deeply, to sit across from him and feel just for an hour like the world wasn't crumbling under her feet. But another part, I honestly get Putin. The heavier part didn't trust what waited on the other side of a linen tablecloth and soft candlelight. People like Eric lived in glass towers and private boardrooms. Naomi had scrubbed hospital floors at 2 a.m. because housekeeping didn't show. She'd worn the same pair of sneakers through 2 winters. There was no common ground between them. Not really, just this strange warm thread that kept pulling tighter, closer. At 6:55, she stood across the street from the restaurant. Snow drifted gently in the air. She watched the host at the window checking a reservation list. The glow from inside soft and golden. She didn't belong here, not in these secondhand boots, not in this thrifted coat, not with hair she tried to tame with drugstore lotion. Still, she crossed the street. The host smiled when she stepped inside, not batting an eye. Table for 2. Yes, she said, her voice low. He led her toward the back of the room, past couples speaking in hushed tones, past the clink of wine glasses and soft jazz music humming through hidden speakers. Eric was already seated, clean-cut, a charcoal gray blazer, no tie. He stood as she approached. Naomi, Eric. He pulled out her chair. She sat slowly. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure either. He smiled gently. Thank you. Naomi looked around. This place is beautiful. I used to come here with clients, always felt a little too polished. She raised an eyebrow, and now I wanted to share it with someone real. Their eyes met. Something softened in the space between them. Menus arrived. Orders were placed. Small talk danced across the table like cautious footsteps. But the air shifted the moment Naomi excused herself to the restroom. She walked down a short hallway lined with framed awards and photographs. Donor dinners, fundraisers, galas. She passed them without looking until one caught the edge of her vision, a plaque with Eric's name etched in gold. Harris Health Tech, founding sponsor. Below it, a photo. Naomi's heart slowed. It was him. Eric smiling, arm draped around Julian Vance, standing in front of a massive check being handed to the very hospital group that had absorbed and then shut down her pediatric unit. She stared at it, frozen. The hallway felt colder now, her breath caught. Her hands trembled. She walked back to the table slowly, her face unreadable. Eric looked up as she sat. Everything okay? You never told me, she said quietly. Told you what? That you funded the closure that took my job. Eric blinked. Naomi, I saw the photo. His voice caught. That deal was supposed to expand services, not cut them. I didn't know but they did. And you were part of it. The table went still. So did the room, at least in her mind. Naomi stood, sliding her napkin off her lap. Naomi, wait, please. I can't do this, she whispered. I thought you were different. I am. Then why does this feel exactly the same? He rose too, his voice low but urgent. Because I was trying to undo it because I'm still trying. She shook her head, stepping back. I can't be your redemption project, Eric. I don't have the energy to be the story that fixes you. He didn't follow her, he didn't beg. He just stood there, breathing hard, watching her walk out of the restaurant and disappear into the snow. And as she turned the corner, heart thudding in her chest, Naomi wasn't sure if she was leaving behind a mistake or the only good thing she hadn't seen coming. The motel room was silent, except for the hum of the heater and the gentle rustle of Laya's coloring pencil across the back of her receipt. Naomi sat at the small table, fingers curled around a chipped coffee mug she hadn't sipped from in 20 minutes. Her thoughts swirled like the snow beyond the window, slow, disorienting, cold. She hadn't answered Eric's texts. 3, maybe 4, had come in over the last 2 days. None pushy, just him. I didn't know, please let me explain. You matter still, she didn't know what to do with that. Across the room, Leia looked up. Are we still seeing Mr. Eric tomorrow? Naomi swallowed. No, sweetheart. Leia paused, blinking. Did he move away? No, he just... Naomi trailed off, eyes stinging. Sometimes grown-ups stop showing up the way we want them to. Leia thought about that for a moment. I liked it when he read stories. Naomi nodded, barely holding it together. Me too. There was a soft knock at the door. Not urgent, just a tap, tap in stillness. Naomi stood slowly and crossed the room, heart in her throat. When she opened the door, Maggie stood there, her cheeks pink from the wind, holding a paper envelope in one gloved hand and a small brown paper bag in the other. I figured you weren't coming to the kitchen today, she said gently. So I brought the kitchen to you. Naomi stepped aside. Maggie entered, shedding her coat with practiced grace and setting the items on the table. Chicken and rice, she said, still warm. Thank you, Naomi murmured. Maggie didn't sit. She just looked at Naomi with eyes too knowing. You want to talk? She asked. Naomi shook her head. All right, Maggie said, reaching into her pocket. Then I'll talk just for a second. She pulled out the envelope and handed it over. What is this? Naomi asked. It's a letter. Well, kind of, more like a receipt. Eric dropped it off at the center yesterday. Didn't say much, just asked me to give it to you. Naomi hesitated, then took the envelope. Maggie gave her a moment, then smiled softly. I'll check on you tomorrow. Don't disappear. And then she left. Naomi sat down and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper neatly folded. No greeting, no signature, just a scan of a cancellation letter from Harris Health Tech. 2, MedSphere Systems. 3, withdrawal of contract and licensing agreement. Effective immediately below it, a handwritten note in the margin. I walked away. I don't know if it's enough, but I couldn't keep building something that erased people like you. People who taught me what care actually means. Naomi's fingers trembled. Behind the letter was something else. A photo, an old one. A hospital hallway, worn linoleum floors. A young Eric in scrubs, arm around a patient, smiling like he hadn't yet learned how grief rewrites the body. On the back, scribbled in the same pen, before I forgot who I was, Naomi pressed the paper against her chest. That night, long after Leia fell asleep, curled beneath 2 blankets in her favorite pillow. Naomi sat in the dark, staring out the window. The snow had stopped. The sky was clear, stars faint, but present. She hadn't realized how heavy the weight of survival had become, or how rare it was to feel. Remembered the next morning she rose early and walked to the soup kitchen before it opened. She needed to move, to breathe, to sort cans if no one wanted her to speak. But Maggie was already there organizing the morning prep. Naomi stepped inside. You knew, Maggie didn't look up. Knew what? That he walked away from the deal. Maggie finally met her eyes. I knew he was scared and that he did it anyway. Naomi's voice cracked. Why would he do that for me? Maggie shook her head. Not for you, honey. Because of you. Naomi wiped her eyes and reached for an apron. Across town, Eric stood in the quiet of his empty office. The plaque with his name was gone from the wall. The framed award he once displayed now inside a cardboard box near the door. He hadn't heard from Naomi. He didn't expect to, but he'd meant it. Every line of the letter, every choice. He reached into the box and pulled out a photo of his wife. Held it for a long time. I think she's the kind of person you would have liked, he whispered. She doesn't ask for space. She earns it. His phone buzzed. One new message from Naomi. Just 2 words. Come talk. And for the first time in a very long time, Eric smiled. The community kitchen was closed for the morning, but Naomi stood behind the counter anyway, wiping down surfaces that didn't need it, lining up ladles that had already been stacked. Her hands needed something to do, her heart, not so much. She kept checking the clock on the wall. The ticking felt louder today. At 9:42 a.m., the front door opened quietly. Eric stepped in, coat unzipped, scarf damp with melted snow. His eyes found her instantly. Naomi didn't move. She just looked at him. I got your message, he said softly. I almost deleted it, she replied. He stepped closer, not too close. I'm glad you didn't. Naomi reached for a dish towel she didn't need and folded it, then unfolded it again. You didn't have to do what you did, I know. You risked your company, your reputation, your future. I didn't do it to prove anything. He said, I did it because I was finally ready to stand behind what I say I believe. She exhaled. I don't know how to let someone stand with me when I've spent so long standing alone. I'm not here to stand in front of you, Eric said, voice steady. I'm here beside you. No spotlight, no savior act. Naomi turned toward him then, arms crossed, her eyes tired but sharp. You made a mess, she said. He nodded. I know, and it hurt. I know, but you owned it. He didn't speak, just watched her. Breath slow, patient. Naomi walked around the counter, feet quiet on the tile. She stood in front of him now, the air between them full and still. My mother used to say, people don't change when they're comfortable. She said, only when it costs them something. It cost me, he said, but I still don't regret it. Naomi nodded. Good. A beat passed. I'm not perfect, she said. Good. Eric replied, voice softer. I'm tired of perfect. They stood in silence, not needing to fill it. The kind of silence that made room for breath, for truth. Then Naomi asked, what do you want, Eric? Not someday, not theoretically, right now. He blinked. Right now, I wanted to build something that matters, not just a company, a life, one that doesn't disappear the second it gets hard. And me. You are the part that keeps me honest, he said, and that scares me. But I want that too. Naomi looked down at the floor for a look. When she looked back up, her eyes were glassy but strong. I don't have anything to offer you but honesty, she said, and hard days, and a daughter who asks questions no one's ready for. I want all of it, he said without hesitation. A tear slipped down Naomi's cheek. She laughed once quietly and wiped it away with the back of her hand. You always talk like you're reading from some invisible script. I'm terrified, he admitted. But I mean every word. Naomi stepped forward. She didn't touch him. Not yet. But the space between them disappeared. Then stop talking, she whispered. And for a long moment, they just stood there, eyes closed, forehead to forehead, nothing but breath and proximity, and the heavy sacred ache of being seen. Later that afternoon, they walked to the park down the block from the shelter. Leia ran ahead, crunching through the snow, scarf trailing behind her like a comet's tail. Eric and Naomi walked slowly, shoulder to shoulder. I still don't know what's next, Naomi said. That makes two of us, but you're used to leading. I'm learning how to follow, he said with a smirk. She nudged him gently with her elbow. I think we should build something, she said suddenly. Something for people like me, like us. A place where care doesn't get buried under policy. Eric looked at her. Tell me what you need. I need a building, she said. I need volunteers. I need coffee. A lot of it, he smiled, and I need someone to help me fight through the red tape without losing my temper. I know a guy, she smiled back. I bet you do. They stopped near a bench as Isla plopped down to make a lopsided snow angel. You ever think? Naomi said, maybe we were supposed to find each other when we were both falling apart. Eric nodded. That's the only way people fit sometimes in the cracks. She looked at him quieter now. I was afraid I'd lose myself in you. You didn't, he said. You reminded me who I used to be. And just like that, the snow started again. Soft flakes drifting like the sky had decided it was okay to let go. Naomi watched Leia throw her arms wide to catch them. Then she looked at Eric, her voice barely audible over the wind. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not, he said. I'm making one I want to earn. And for the first time in a very long time, she believed him. The building looked like nothing at first, just an old brick structure on the edge of Whittier, windows boarded, snow piled up against its uneven steps. A faded for lease sign hung crooked above the door. Paint peeled from the siding like the place had forgotten what it meant to be touched. Naomi stood on the sidewalk in silence, hands tucked into her coat, breath forming soft clouds in front of her lips. This is it? She asked. Eric nodded, standing beside her. It used to be a pediatric clinic, closed 4 years ago. The city's been sitting on it since. She looked up at the facade, tilting her head slightly. It's a little sad. Most beginnings are, he said. Naomi let that hang between them before she asked. You bought this? I leased it under my name, he said, low monthly through a community grant quietly for now. Didn't want your name tied to it unless you wanted it to be. She turned toward him slowly. You did all this without telling me. I wanted to show you the idea before I offered the keys. Naomi looked back at the building. 100 thoughts raced through her mind. Permits, insurance, zoning laws, renovations. Then beyond that, beds, triage rooms, volunteers, dignity, access, care that didn't feel like begging. Let me guess, she said. You already called someone about plans. Eric smirked. Maybe just an architect who owed me a favor. Naomi smiled in spite of herself. You really don't know how to think small, do you? I thought small for a long time, he said. Then I met you. She glanced at the front steps again, where the snow had started to melt in patches. Can I see inside? I was hoping you'd ask. He led her up the narrow walkway, unlocking the rusted door. The hinges groaned as it opened. The inside smelled like dust and old carpet, but the light from the tall windows reached across the empty floor like it still remembered how to welcome people. Naomi stepped inside slowly, taking it in. The bones were solid. There was a reception desk near the front, faded signs still hanging on the wall. Check-in, waiting room, vaccinations. It's bigger than I expected, she murmured, stepping into the open space where sunlight stretched across the floor in long, tired stripes. I figured it could be a hybrid, Eric said behind her. Community care, basic treatment, family services, maybe even housing assistance upstairs. Whatever you dream up, Naomi turned around. You're serious about letting me lead this? I don't want to own this, he said. I want to build it with you. She stared at him for a long moment. Most people with your kind of money would have torn this place down, she said. I've already torn enough things down, Eric replied. I'd rather help build something that heals. Naomi walked deeper into the room. Her footsteps echoed. She passed old exam rooms with paper still clinging to the walls. A stack of forgotten chairs leaned against one corner as if waiting for a purpose. In the far back, she paused at a narrow room with a frosted glass window. It had been an office once. She pushed the door open gently. Inside, the walls were blank except for one thing, a plaque mounted above a clean wooden shelf. Sharon House. Naomi's breath caught. She turned sharply. What is this? Eric stepped into the doorway, hands in his coat pockets. It's yours, he said. Or rather, it's your mother's. Naomi blinked, eyes suddenly brimming. You named the whole place after her? She whispered. I listened, he said. She was the one who taught you to show up even when everything falls apart. This place is her legacy as much as it is yours. Naomi walked over to the plaque, fingertips tracing the edge of the wood. You remembered her name. I remembered everything. Her shoulders shook once and she let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. She'd call you dramatic. She'd be right, Eric said. Naomi turned to face him, her voice trembling. What if I fail? Then we fail together, he said. And we get up together. Naomi exhaled, tears slipping quietly now. I haven't let myself hope like this in a long time. Eric stepped closer, not to fix, not to hold, just to be near. You don't have to hope alone. She nodded slowly. Then after a long pause, she said, All right, let's build this thing. Eric smiled. You sure? No, Naomi said, but that's never stopped me before. They stood in the stillness of the empty clinic, snowlight pouring through the windows, dust rising around their ankles like tiny ghosts letting go. And for the first time, the space didn't feel abandoned. It felt alive, waiting. Naomi looked around once more, then whispered under her breath, just loud enough for the walls to remember. We're coming back this time for good. It snowed the morning Sharon House opened. Not the angry, slanting kind that buries sidewalks and silences cities, but the soft kind, the kind that seemed to bless the rooftops with quiet, the kind that made things feel new again. Naomi stood in front of the building's freshly painted door, deep green with brass numbers above the frame and a wreath made of dried lavender and pine. Her fingers gripped the clipboard tighter than they needed to. Behind her, volunteers buzzed like quiet bees, setting out folding chairs, aligning pamphlets, adjusting coffee carts. The scent of cinnamon from the donated pastries mingled with fresh paint and something even warmer. Purpose. She felt her pulse in her throat. You ready? Eric asked behind her, voice lower than usual. She didn't answer right away, just kept looking at the words on the glass. Sharon House, a place for healing, a place to begin. Naomi turned slowly, eyes tracing over Eric's coat, dusted in snow. Do you ever worry we dream too big? He shook his head. Not once, even now. He stepped beside her, his breath visible in the air. Especially now, Naomi exhaled, the fog of it mingling with his. Inside lay erased from room to room with a basket of ribbon-tied cards she'd made for the guests. You matter. You are not alone. Come in. Stay warm. Her pink boots left little melted prints across the tile, but no one scolded her. Maggie was already inside too, hunched over the refreshment table, arranging thermoses like precious antiques. She spotted Naomi through the window and gave a little nod like they were soldiers holding the line. The doors opened at 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. People trickled in slowly at first. Mothers with children in tow. Elderly women in wool coats too thin for the cold. A man holding a handwritten note from a shelter worker that simply read, "Please help him." Naomi greeted each one by name when she could, and when she couldn't, she greeted them by the look in their eyes. I'm Naomi, she said. Welcome home. By mid-morning, the waiting room was full. Soft music played from a small Bluetooth speaker someone had donated. Volunteers poured coffee, helped with paperwork, distributed gloves and scarves. One of the former nurses from Naomi's old hospital had shown up unexpectedly asking to volunteer. Another brought food. By noon, they had to turn people away. Not because there wasn't room, but because they hadn't expected so many to believe so soon. Naomi stood in the hallway outside the exam room, her chest rising and falling like she'd run miles. Eric approached slowly, watching her closely. "You okay?" She looked at him, eyes wide, overwhelmed. "It's working," he smiled. "Of course it is." Naomi pressed her back to the wall. "We're going to need more chairs. We'll find them and more staff and funding." And Eric reached out, placing a hand gently over hers. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." She nodded slowly, but her eyes filled again. Not from panic, from release. "I didn't think we'd get here," she whispered. "I always did," he said. "But I never imagined it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like watching something bloom in winter." The front door opened again. Naomi turned instinctively, but it wasn't a patient. It was Julian. He walked in with careful steps, dressed in a dark coat, a folder tucked under one arm. His expression was unreadable. Naomi straightened. Eric stepped forward, guarded but calm. "You didn't call." Julian looked around slowly, taking it all in. The modest setup, the homemade signs, the line of guests waiting patiently for warmth and dignity. "I wanted to see it with my own eyes," Julian said, "before I decided how I felt." Naomi stood still, chin high, clipboard clutched to her chest. Julian looked at her, then back at Eric. "You tanked our biggest contract to help build this." "Yes," Eric said. Julian looked down at the floor, then back up. "Good," he said. Naomi blinked. "What?" "I was angry," Julian said. "Still am. But seeing this, the way people walked in here like it meant something just to be invited in." He paused. "I get it now." Naomi didn't relax, but something inside her softened. Julian stepped forward and handed Eric the folder. "A friend of mine runs a clinic in St. Paul. She's got extra exam tables and 2 part-time nurses. Says she's tired of red tape. Might want a partner." Eric took it, surprised. "You're serious?" "Don't make me repeat myself," Julian muttered, then added quieter. "Good luck, both of you." He turned to go at the door. He paused. "Sharon House, huh?" Naomi smiled faintly. "It's named after my mother." Julian nodded once. "Then it's in the right hands." He left before she could reply. The sun broke through the clouds mid-afternoon, sending gold streaks across the icy pavement. Inside, Naomi sat with a woman named Jo, who hadn't seen a doctor in 3 years. Eric helped Leia pass out water bottles and fruit cups. Maggie taught a man how to stitch a torn glove using a needle from the supply closet, and for the first time, the word clinic didn't feel cold. Naomi sat behind the intake desk, watching it all unfold. Her heart ached in that quiet, beautiful way it does when something good is finally real. She looked at Eric across the room, kneeling beside a child in a wheelchair, laughing at something the boy said. He glanced up and their eyes met. No words passed. They didn't need to because this was the promise and it was being kept. 1 year later, the snow fell again. The same kind of gentle, drifting snow that had once blanketed a bus stop bench and changed the direction of 2 lives forever. But this time, it didn't feel like survival weather. It felt like something softer, like grace. Inside Sharon House, the warmth pulsed, not just from the radiators, but from the steady rhythm of lives quietly rebuilding. The front lobby smelled like peppermint tea and fresh bread. Naomi moved through the space with quiet purpose, clipboard in hand, a half-finished cup of coffee cooling on the desk behind her. Her badge, simple white, no title, clipped to her sweater, read just Naomi. That's how she wanted it. She peeked into exam room 2, where a mother sat with her teenage son, smiling for the first time since they'd arrived last week. Room 3 held a young couple navigating prenatal care, with the help of a volunteer nurse Naomi had trained herself. The center buzzed with motion and meaning. A woman brushed past Naomi in the hallway, pausing briefly. "You remembered my name," the woman said softly, her voice catching. Naomi placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "That's because it matters." The woman nodded and walked on. Naomi turned the corner and found Leah in the community room with two other children, all of them folding construction paper into lopsided hearts. She was taller now, more confident, her hair pulled back in a red ribbon, her laugh easy and loud. "Almost ready?" Naomi asked. Leah held up a card that read, "You belong here," in purple crayon. "Almost," Eric's voice echoed softly down the hallway. "Everything's set up outside. You're not going to believe how many people showed up." Naomi turned. He leaned against the door frame in his black coat, sleeves pushed up, gloves in one hand, cheeks still pink from the cold. His smile was quieter now, deeper somehow, earned. She walked over and adjusted his scarf. "You're terrible at wrapping this. That's why I keep you around," he said. She gave him a look. "Really? Well, that and the fact that you run this place better than I ever could." She smirked. "Don't you forget it." He leaned closer, voice lower. "Never." Outside, a small crowd had gathered for the one-year celebration. Nothing flashy, no press, no podiums, just a community meal, donated scarves, music from a local trio playing acoustic covers on borrowed speakers. Former patients handed out cider. Volunteers danced with toddlers on the sidewalk. Julian even brought extra folding chairs and actual hot chocolate this time. Naomi stepped outside and watching it all unfold. The wind tousled her hair. She pulled her coat tighter, but didn't move, didn't speak. She just stood in the center of it all, watching a dream she never dared name come fully alive. Eric joined her, slipping his hand into hers without a word. "You remember what I looked like the first night you saw me?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes. I didn't even have socks on, just those hospital shoes with the holes. I remember." She looked up at him, and now he turned toward her. "Now you wear hope like it's stitched into your skin." Naomi's eyes welled, but she didn't look away. "I still have hard days. We all do. Some mornings I wake up and wonder when it's all going to collapse." Eric reached up, brushing a curl from her cheek. "Then we rebuild again and again if we have to." She leaned into his shoulder, her voice quiet. "You didn't rescue me." "I know. You remembered me," she said. "When I had nothing left to offer, you made me want to remember myself," he whispered. The snow thickened, coating the sidewalks like a fresh canvas. Children stomped in it with squeals of delight. A teenage boy wrapped a scarf around his younger sister and gave her the last muffin from his plate. Maggie poured another cup of cider and handed it to a man she used to scold for showing up late. From somewhere deep in the crowd, a small choir began to sing. No microphone, no instruments, just voices. Soft, strong, belonging. Naomi looked up at the building, its windows glowing golden against the gray sky. "I wish my mother could see this," she said. "She does," Eric replied. And somehow Naomi believed that. Later, after the celebration wound down and families trickled back into the warmth of the center, Naomi and Eric stood alone in the courtyard. Laya lay curled on a bench beside them, fast asleep under a borrowed quilt. The snow had stopped. Naomi looked up at the sky, stars peeking through. She took a breath like she hadn't taken in years, full without apology. "I used to think surviving was the most I could ask for," she said. Eric brushed his fingers gently against hers. Now I know love can grow in the wreckage," she said. "Not in spite of it, but because of it." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, slow and still. "Then let's keep growing." Naomi smiled. They stood there quiet beneath the stars, three hearts wrapped in a future that hadn't been promised, only chosen. And when Naomi finally whispered, "We're home," she wasn't speaking to Eric. She was speaking to every part of herself that had once gone silent and now had found its voice. If you enjoyed this video, comment one to let me know. If not, comment two. Your thought mattered to me either.